Welcome to the Career Jitsu Podcast. We are so excited here today. We have Ray Freeman. I am going to start with asking our friends, our listeners. Most people think of jiu-jitsu as changing lives on the mats, but have you ever really thought about jiu-jitsu changing entire communities? Because this gentleman is changing entire communities because he is a founder of a nonprofit organization called One Community Jiu-Jitsu. One Community Jiu-Jitsu, he will get into what it is and explain what his mission and his vision is with his club. So we are excited to talk about that. And we're also excited to talk about the fact that he just got his brown belt in BJJ.
Raise the
So,
roof. Raise the roof.
He is a brown belt in BJJ under Renato Tavares of the Carlson Gracie lineage. Congratulations on your brown belt, Ray, and welcome to our Career Jitsu Podcast.
Much appreciated, brother. Much appreciated. Short correction there. I actually got promoted under the Leo Picanha lineage. Frost Azab promoted me, but nonetheless, it's all good, man. I certainly appreciate the congratulations. It's been a long road. 11 years in the game.
It is definitely time to celebrate, Ray. That's a wonderful accomplishment. And a lot of us are just, trying to get there. And it's good to see people get there. And that's an inspiration for us. I am, as a teacher, I'm a high school teacher. One of the things you learn as a high school teacher is that there's no such thing as a bad kid. There's such thing as a kid who has had bad circumstances, but little people, kids, are really wonderful creatures. And if you can give them a way out at a young age, it's one of the biggest gifts you can give. So I am so excited to hear about your journey. But before we jump into what you do with One Community Jiu-Jitsu Club, I'd like you to tell our listeners how you got introduced to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu 11 years ago. What was it that clicked you into doing it? What was your initial feeling about it when you went? Some of your ups and downs, and how'd you get to your brown belt? A little of that journey, and then we'll bring in how that then blossomed into One Community
Absolutely. I'll
Jiu-Jitsu
try
Club.
to keep it as short as possible, but it's a pretty long story. So I started in 2015, but I was a fan of MMA for about 8 years, prior. I saw the rise of, Ronda Rousey. I came in with Brock Lesnar. I was a fan of, pro wrestling. I came into MMA with Brock Lesnar and saw the rise of Anderson Silva and all those guys. In 2015, I was gaining a lot of weight, settling down with my girlfriend at the time, current wife, and she's a great cook. So she was feeding me good food, man. I was gaining a lot of weight, and I'm only 5'6". I was approaching 210 pounds. And I was like, I got to do something to, manage this weight. And, being a fan of MMA, figured I'd try. Judo was actually what I wanted to learn because I was inspired by Ronda just finishing people like instantly. 1 minute it was her fights. I was like, that's what I want to do. I don't want to be in this for a long time. And I walked into a jiu-jitsu gym that was having a private lesson. A soccer mom was getting her private lesson. The coach told me to jump in there and see how I did. And quickly, within seconds, she jumped on my back, choked me. That happened 3 times in a row. I was instantly humbled. And the feeling that I had was I never want to feel like that again. And I was instantly humbled. And I was like, man, I have to learn this or else like I'm super vulnerable. And so that's what really created that initial spark. About 6 months of training is when the real light bulb went off. So a little bit more background. I grew up in foster care. My mother lost her parental rights when I was 12 years old. It sent me and my sisters into the foster care system. And when I aged out of foster care, I carried a lot of trauma into my adulthood. And when I was at that 6-month mark in jiu-jitsu, I started to realize what it was doing for my mental, right? Like helping me with the traumas, letting me know that anger was not going to be the issue out of my situation, letting me know that being sorry for myself and sad for myself was not going to be the answer of that situation. Even though those feelings are all valid, how can I say? I think there was one day on the mats where I was literally like being submitted and I felt this anger and sadness about the helplessness. But I also realized that that wasn't going to help me in that situation. And that's when it clicked for my traumas, right? For my traumas in foster care. And so 2 years more of training, I got my blue belt. And a couple years after that, my initial gym, American Top Team HD, here in Kansas City, he closed down. And when they closed down, I realized that Kansas City, Kansas, a city of 170,000 people, had no Brazilian Jiu Jitsu spaces at all. Couldn't believe it. But then I also realized that why they didn't have a Jiu Jitsu space. Jiu Jitsu is very affluent. And when you look at Kansas City, the demographics, the average income for a household is right around $30,000. That doesn't leave a whole lot of expendable income to pay the average memberships in the KC Metro, which are approaching $200 a month right now. And that's kind of the origins of One Community Jiu-Jitsu Club. That's kind of how I got really my initial martial arts in me. Like that's where it came less of me training jujitsu and more of me becoming a martial artist is where I started giving back to my community. And yeah, that's how One Community Jiu-Jitsu Club.
So tell us about One Jiu-Jitsu Community. You have your own gym, your own mats, and then you get sponsors to, obviously you have costs involved, so you get local sponsors to help. How do you pick the kids? How many kids do you have? Tell us about the genesis of this idea from seedling to where it is now.
Absolutely. The genesis, it all started as an idea of like, man, if we can have jujitsu in schools, then maybe like we can reduce some of the high behaviors we're seeing. Maybe we see less school shootings. Maybe we see less fightings. That was kind of my thought is like maybe these kids that are committing these crimes, they don't have that sense of belonging because I know I experienced that as I moved from home to home in foster care. And so I started a GoFundMe and we raised our initial $5,000 capital to host free jujitsu classes. I made an agreement with the Catholic Church to let us hold classes in there. They had a space in an abandoned elementary school building. So if you could think of a classroom from 20s, an elementary school classroom from 1920s, still with chalkboard on the wall and everything, that's literally our origin space, 700 square feet. Once you get about 12 bodies in there, it's pretty full. And we just ran with that for about 4 years until we grow to our new space or the space that we're in now, which is at Turner Rec. It's a little bit bigger, closer to about 2,000 square feet. And in that space, we can fit about 30 kids before it starts to fill full. And more recently, we've established partnerships with the public school system. So we are in Lindbergh Elementary School, and we're hosting 22 students there right after school. They leave their classroom, they have their gis, and we have instructors deployed to that location. Because again, we're in an area that doesn't have jiu-jitsu, right? We deploy guys from the suburbs of Kansas City to these locations. We pay them to be there and teach these kids jiu-jitsu. And it's been working for 2 years.
Damn, that is quite a story. How you had the idea. You said something that really clicked with me. You said, first of all, that you've been through some difficult times and that jiu-jitsu was your mental therapy. I can't tell you how many guests we've had on this show that have said that exact thing. Jiu-jitsu is my therapy. It's my way to handle my issues in a healthy way. If I miss it, my mental state goes down. And the other thing that you said that I thought was interesting is, like everybody else, the first time you started jiu-jitsu was opening up a can of instant humble. Instant, that woman who tapped you out 3 times, you're like, holy crap. That is like magic. And I think a lot of us share that experience. You go in and it either turns people away like, oh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to get my ass kicked every day. Or people come in and say, I wanna know your powers. I wanna learn that. So you took those 2 things that are gonna help these kids, right? You have to be humble, you can't be angry and bullying, and you need mental therapy, and that's I don't wanna say, I hate the word one size fits all, but in a weird sense, it is a one size fits all. It becomes what you need it. What you get from jujitsu is different than what Jason gets and different from me, but it helps all of us deal with whatever problems we're dealing with, right?
This is why I think jujitsu is invaluable. Here's the thing, man. And I'm not blaming and I don't blame these, jujitsu gyms that make their money. That's how jujitsu is operated internally. But I truly think that jujitsu is so valuable that it's invaluable. We need to get this widespread. I think that it would be great if we start with this, from the age of 4 or 5 years old and grow with these tools to not only handle ourselves physically, but to handle ourselves emotionally, mentally. How do we interact socially? Like kids, we really aren't learning that. And the humility factor, I got to hit on that because you usually don't hear people talking about that until they come out of jail or they come out of prison. They're talking about, oh, I wish I would have learned things differently. Or they have a severe accident or something horrible happens to them, right? I feel like jujitsu is one of the only activities that we get to experience as humans that gives us that stuff that those guys are learning without the severe consequences. Although we have severe consequences in jiu-jitsu, it's not prison, it's not death, it's not, being medically, in trouble.
The humility thing is so important. There is a student, one of my students came to me, and she's in an AP class, and she's smart. She does great in the class, but there's a kid who's a total genius in the class that tells her things like our class average, because the classes kind of compete for class average. Our class average would be so much higher without you. Why are you even in this class? And this kid gets like hundreds all the time. This is an example of a kid who's very smart. He's a great student, but if he took jujitsu, he would never say that in an academic setting because he would know, because he would have been taught the jujitsu. And think of the ripple effect of that. This poor girl now, who's proud that she's getting her low 90s, high 80s, is now feeling like she's dragging the class down because there's not the element of humility
Yep.
in there.
Yep.
So I love that you're working on this with kids. Jason, I mean, you know this because you teach kids all the time, and you always teach them about mental jujitsu. I love Jason does this for the kids. He says, we're going to learn jujitsu, but we're going to learn mental jujitsu, that social, emotional, humility, kindness. So Jason, you can see this connection.
Yeah, I think the beauty of jujitsu is that it knows no boundaries. I think that I love the story that you used, Ray, about how you started and you just contacted a church and you said you found like the basement of a church and it was like chalkboards written on the walls or whatever, chalk on the walls or whatever. And I'm just like, I was envisioning that in my head and just thinking to myself, how beautiful is jujitsu to like be able to like start like that. You hear of stories like of somebody walking into some academy that has these beautiful mats and has such an amazing facility and a professional facility. And you think, wow, I want to join this school. But you don't hear about stories about finding the love of jujitsu and finding the value of jujitsu from something that started with almost nothing. It's such a beautiful story. And I think it ties in with your mission, Ray. I really love the mission of One Community Jiu-Jitsu in the sense that, you're getting a chance to make changes in kids' lives that normally wouldn't be able to experience the beauty of jujitsu. I personally feel, I don't know if you feel the same way about this, Frank and Ray, but I feel like schools in general, they are failing kids in respect, confidence, and discipline,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And you're finding a solution for that. You're finding a problem, honing in on that problem and finding a solution for it.
Yeah. I think the schools, has American school systems been so systematic for so long that there's been so many rules, so many things that have been written that kind of ties some of these teachers and principals, it kind of ties their hands a little bit. And I've kind of gotten that sentiment from some of the admin that I work with is like, and I think that's why they lean into our program to help is we are after school entity. Like we aren't the schools, although we are taking the mats and bringing jujitsu into the schools. I clearly explained to the parents and the students, this is not school. Like we are doing jujitsu and you're learning lessons that you are going to take. You're learning lessons that you're going to take into school. But we're in school right now. Like you're learning jujitsu and you need to act accordingly. Like we make our kids, take their shoes off before they get onto the mats. We take breathing exercises. We bow in. We line up. We respectfully shake hands after class. We treat each other kindly as we're doing technique, and we talk about how to apply that during their school day.
That is,
Perfect.
I hope everybody, all of our listeners are hearing this, and I hope this sparks somebody else in the educational field to consider doing something like this in their area. Because you said it, access, it's an access thing. Other things, other activities, even in a lower socioeconomic strata, you can still get. But you're right, jiu-jitsu is expensive because the mats are expensive, because you haven't it's not expensive because gym owners are hiking up prices. It's the cost of having a gym,
It's that,
insurance, the
yep,
mats, the
instructors.
facility,
There's
the instructors. There's so many. It's a high level sport. So for you to be able to have the resourcefulness, and like Jason, I love your point about him having no place to go. He goes to the Catholic Church. That is exactly what you learn in jiu-jitsu. You learn to work with what you have,
yep,
right?
yep,
If you're not a big person, well, you learn to work on maybe butterfly guard, because that's going to help you as a smaller person, right? If you're not a fast person, you learn to use pressure passing instead of regular, the cartwheel pass or the
absolutely,
sumo pass.
absolutely,
So do you feel like your jujitsu training helped you be more resourceful in then taking on these
brother.
challenges?
Brother, there's no way I'm doing any of this without jujitsu. Even an inkling of that's honestly the scary thing to me because I truly don't know what my life looks like without jujitsu. I know I don't start a business. I know I don't get physically fit. I know I still don't have a healthy way to deal with my traumas. And it scares me thinking like what would have happened if I didn't find jujitsu? Like that's the only way I was able to have the gumption to even try this. Dude, I was a blue belt when I started One Community Jiu Jitsu Club, right? Like, think of the imposter syndrome I had to get through
Yes.
to say, oh, I'm going to lay mats down, I'm going to teach classes and to all these white belts, right? Because in my head, if it wasn't me, it wasn't going to ever happen. In my head, a blue belt can pass on a lot of knowledge to a lot of white belts. And that's kind of how it began.
So tell us a little bit about how students find you. Can you tell us a story about a student or two that, like, how did they find you? Do they go for total free, or is there like, if you're a rich kid, you have to pay whatever, $150 a month. If you're like semi-poor, you got to pay $70 a month. And if you're poor, you get to go for free. How does it work like that? And can you talk about a couple of kids that maybe you are able to turn around in their life, some of the challenges they were
Yeah.
facing?
Yeah, sure thing. So right now we are currently operating our in-school programs are 100% free to the kids. Our community center program is $25 a month to the kids. And
Wow,
yeah,
that's so
and that's
good.
really just to make sure that they have a little bit of accountability piece, right? Just
Hmm.
show up. One thing that we realized in 6 years of doing this was sometimes with the community center programs, people would not show up. They would sign up, but they wouldn't show up. And so that little bit of accountability really helped make sure they at least showed up.
A little skin in the game. Yeah.
Literally, right? And you and I know $25 for jiu-jitsu is literally like I,
It's literally free. It's
it's
just a token.
it's quite literally, yeah,
It's
right?
basically saying that, yeah, I'm really going to come. I'm
Yeah,
really going to come to
yeah.
class,
So
because
we
otherwise I'm not going to spend $25. Right.
absolutely. But the in-school program is 100% free as of right now to the kids. And more recently, we are looking to partner with another nonprofit on a cohort space, something that really isn't available here in Kansas City, Kansas. Just to give you a little overview, 20,000 square feet of space. Their nonprofit already focuses on boxing and strength and conditioning, so sports performance. They're adding batting cages for baseball guys, a golf simulator, and our jiu-jitsu program is going in there. So this,
Wow.
I know, dude, it's
They
actually
they
really
they
cool.
share your vision. They do this. They have sponsors to help the kids get in.
Yep. It's just their niche has always been boxing and sports performance. We've always kind of talked about how to collaborate over the last years. And now this opportunity is rising that we can both kind of help each other. It'll be a good fundraising mechanism for both of our missions because we'll have such a value proposition that we'll actually be able to charge a typical membership, especially to people that can afford it.
Right. You'll have like a hybrid approach.
And getting
That's
the brown
wonderful.
belt
Is
help.
that in your area? Is that like drivable from where you're teaching right now?
Yeah, yeah. So it's actually about 3 blocks away from my house, which is a nice perk. From our
So you
other
could
two,
walk. You could.
I could ride a bike. Yeah, walk, ride a bike. Exactly. And our other locations, so it's all within about 10 to 15 minutes drive, which is a big hurdle for a lot of our families, transportation. And so we're trying to figure out solutions to work around that. And a lot of that is partnering with the schools on identifying the kids that really could benefit from having a bus, pick them up from school, take them to their facility. That way they can get the services they need.
And could you tell us a little bit about like an experience with a kid that you might have had that has gone
Absolutely.
well for
Yeah.
you?
Man, there's so many, but I mean, one that I'm thinking of is a little girl. I call her the Anaconda, and
And kind of.
she's only been training probably about 8 or 9 months. She will tell you, and her mom will tell you, they've tried every sport, everything, and nothing stuck. She hates throwing balls. She hates kicking balls. She doesn't like ball at all. But when she started jujitsu, she was like, this is the best thing ever. And I mean, she's grown so much on the mats that she's gotten a leadership role. I went ahead and promoted her to gray and white belt after she competed twice this past year and took gold in one. And really just showing that potential, right? That potential for the growth of these students. Another kid that I want to talk about is a student who he's on the spectrum and he's been with us for about 2 years now. And this kid, with about the 6 month mark, they shared a story where the kid was helping his grandpa move some things out of the house and he went to take a step off the porch and fell. But when he fell, he did a break fall and he rolled through it. And he told me that helped him not get hurt in that situation. And I mean, so we have mental components and we have physical components. I tell people the warm ups have helped me in my day to day life way more than arm
Then the
bar has.
rolling.
You
Right,
know
right.
what I mean? But those are my two
Yeah.
experiences.
Man,
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
sweet.
those are great stories, and I think, one other part of that is the social and emotional control that these kids get too. I think it's great to hear stories of people winning trophies and gaining the physical skills that they need. But I think like, your kids, a lot of your kids are coming from, maybe they're coming from trauma too, or they're coming from some experiences that aren't too good at home. And it's their outlet, right? It's their outlet to get away from that and be able to be in an environment where they're working with other kids and they're being physical with other kids, but they're learning how to control their emotions because I think like controlling your emotions is more important than anything, really. If you can control, you can learn all the physical skills in the world, but if you can't control your emotions, there's always going to be problems.
They say 10% of life is what happens to you, the other 90% is how you react.
Damn, that is the Marcus Aurelius Stoic philosophy that I absolutely love. And the funny thing, I just wrote it down. It's right here in my notes. Marcus Aurelius. because I'm getting that vibe from you. Do you follow that philosophy? Do you
I've
know
honestly
of
never
it?
heard that name, but I'm going to look it up after this podcast.
You got to look it up. You got Marcus Aurelius Meditations, and to all of our listeners, this book is exactly revolved around that philosophy. You can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you choose to react to it and how you choose to frame it as either a failure or an opportunity. So, bam. Yeah, you got to get that book. You got to get that book.
I will.
Yeah, and teaching kids those things, those are things that will really stick with them. I want to play devil's advocate a little bit here, Ray. So I'm an administrator. So let's assume I'm a school administrator, and you come to me about your program, and you start telling me about your program, and my response to you is, Ray, I'm sorry. My kids come from a lot of trauma, and I'm afraid to have jujitsu in my school because if you're teaching these kids how to choke each other, I can't be having that in my school. I can't be having kids running around my school choking each other. What's your
Absolutely.
response to that?
Yeah, well, so that's when I'll share, for one, my personal story, which I think it goes a long way. But then I also explain to them that this is what we'll do in collaboration is we will track those behaviors throughout our program. Our goal is certainly to reduce those behaviors, especially based off of my personal experience. And if given the chance, we would love to plan A, come in here during the school day and teach these kids how to deal with their emotions and use jujitsu to do that. Plan B would be to run an after school program targeting those kids that you think have those high behaviors. Plan C would be to bust them to one of our already established locations. And so that's how I would approach. It really makes it difficult for the admin to say no, especially if I've already done the fundraising components. If I'm being honest, Jason, that's the biggest hurdle. They don't usually have too much quarrels with learning jujitsu. It's how do we pay the instructors? How do we get the mats? How do we cover the insurance? Those are the bigger components that I've noticed
Okay.
over the years.
So they're not concerned about liability?
Absolutely. But that's an easy fix. We cover our own insurance and then we add them as an additional insured. So we cover $1 million policy and that usually kind of alleviates those pains.
Wow, that's smart. That's very smart. And also, I mean, you could make the argument, look at football, how violent football is.
Way
You
more
do
violent.
football, way more violent, way more injuries. Look at soccer, a lot of injuries in soccer. Look at lacrosse. That's a really rough sport where checking is hitting people with sticks is totally allowed. Look at schools who have gymnastics. That's freaking dangerous.
Yeah.
Schools that do swimming, so.
Drown.
And yeah, wrestling is at every school. Wrestling, if you learn to slam somebody and you're not on a mat, you slam them on the pavement, that's worse than getting an arm bar. So you can definitely make the case that let's look at every sport. They're all have a component of controlled violence that we learned from one of our other podcasts, the word of controlled violence. So this is
Absolutely.
nothing different.
Yeah, I'd say
In
we
fact,
even
it's
have
more
even more
control.
control.
It's more controlled. It's
Yep,
more controlled.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
honing in
so-
on that too, right? When you're going to sell this program to administrators, I think focusing mostly on the benefits of jujitsu will kind of outweigh those fears, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. The other thing is you can also say, like quick little snippet would be, you can tap out of anything that's uncomfortable. A running back cannot tap out. When they're running and some other guy's coming at them head down, there's no tapping out. You're having your collision. You could tap out anytime you want. And also in jiu-jitsu, we talk to our partners. Hey, you're a lot bigger than me. You mind going? We're going to do a flow roll. You can't do that in football. You can't do that in wrestling. You can't do that anywhere else. It's modified to fit the needs of the person, right?
Mm-hmm. It is.
So you have a lot of arguments on your side.
Yeah, I agree.
And the $1 million policy, money does talk very loud.
No, it does, brother. It does. Surprisingly enough, that policy it's not the most expensive in the world. I mean, I think it costs us about $1,500 a year. Excuse me, which I mean is a substantial amount of money, but to alleviate the pains of the schools, it's
it's worth it. good ROI on that.
Yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely.
Nice.
So Jason, how we doing on time? I want to make sure that we don't
We're doing
go.
okay. I got a question that I thought would be it might be a little bit tough to like answer spontaneously. But if you can look at where One Community Jiu-Jitsu is going and where it could be like 30, 20, 30, 40 years from now, what's the legacy that you would like to leave behind in your jiu-jitsu club?
You know, man, that's an easy one actually for me. So
Okay. Good, good.
I've seen on social medias, there's been a list of things that people think that should be taught in schools. On that list is things like home skills, accounting, taxes, self-defense is one of those things. And I've heard that so many times over the years that I feel like jujitsu is the answer. It is one of those things that should be taught in schools. That is the legacy of One Community Jiu-Jitsu Club. I think that if we are successful in our mission, One Community Jiu-Jitsu Club would eventually cease to exist. That's what I pray for. Like, I think most nonprofits, this is where nonprofits go wrong. A lot of nonprofits are supposed to be on a mission. If you're on a mission, you're supposed to solve that mission. Our mission is to get jiu-jitsu in schools. Very simple. Once jiu-jitsu is in schools nationwide, we don't need to be involved anymore. Like, why do we still need to be taking people's money? That's the legacy of One Community Jiu-Jitsu Club in 30, 40 years. We hopefully were the seed that was planted to get jiu-jitsu in school, that actionable thing to get, not some Facebook post. Like, we actually put people in those spaces and we gave it a true effort. Like, I dove 2 feet first into this thing.
That's awesome.
No ego here. He's trying to work himself out of a job. Man, you are an unselfish guy, Ray. Very impressive.
I
Very
don't,
impressive.
it has its flaws, but I wouldn't have it any other way, man. One thing I like to mention is that I am a man who has reintroduced himself into faith over the last year and a half. I have a pretty good relationship with God now, and I think that that's been really helpful in just spearheading this whole thing.
Well,
You found
when
a
it's
bigger purpose, and when you have
yeah.
a purpose and a passion together, the two combined is going to make you successful for sure.
Absolutely.
Jason, do you have any other questions? Because I want to make sure we get our tap-in time in.
Well,
Any other
I
questions
mean,
before?
let's make this official, Frank. What time is it, Frank?
Let me check my watch. Good God, it's your favorite time of the program, Tap Out Time, where we wrap up some of the major thoughts and ideas of our podcast and just hand it to you gift wrapped with a bow. So let's start out. First of all, Ray, from just a broad perspective, I want to say that I know for a fact there are listeners out here who have suffered trauma. Like you opened up and said, you're a foster care kid. You probably have some rough stories about what you went through. You could have chosen to be a victim. You could have chosen and totally justified, and you could have just, melted away and had a crappy life. But instead, you didn't take that perspective. You built yourself up. Not only did you build yourself up, once you could take care of yourself, then you started taking care of other people. So from a broad perspective, that's something that I think every listener here is going to appreciate, because a lot of our listeners probably have had things happen to them. And this is somebody they can look at like, wow, okay, you did it. So why can't I do it? Love that. Some of the things that you talked about were the jiu-jitsu being a mental therapy. I cannot repeat this enough to people. If you're struggling in life, get on a jiu-jitsu mat. It really does solve your problems. I know it sounds almost cultish, but it's just simple. Get on there. You make a community. These people are your friends. You joke around. You have fun. You laugh. You roll. When you're rolling, whatever's happening at home or at your job, it has no room there. It doesn't fit. Your brain is like, no, I got to get that wrist. I got to grab that wrist. I got to pull in that wrist. And if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you laugh about it at the end. I couldn't get your wrist.
Mhm.
Right? So I think that's great that you did that. I love that you use the word, I'm a big vocab guy, and there's a difference between valuable and invaluable. Invaluable is the biggest, the best, the superlative. And You said that jujitsu was invaluable to you because it changed your life and you don't know where you would be without it. And you're not the only one. We've had so many guests on here who have said the same thing. I don't know where I would. There was a guy that we had that said I would probably be. I I grew up in a drug lord house, and I'd probably be my own drug lord by now, with a safe and drugs. And so it is invaluable, and everybody can tap into it at their own measure. One of the things I love about you is that not only did you not classify yourself as a victim when your business idea was dirt poor, no funding. Well, you had a GoFundMe, you got some seed money, and then you went out to the community and said, "Hey, this is what we're doing. Let's get involved. Let's help kids." That is resourcefulness, and that is a skill that we build in jiu-jitsu, and that helps you in life. Love that. Another thing, and really not about jiu-jitsu, but that I don't want to come off as preachy here, but you mentioned the word access, and I think it's so important because there's a lot of communities that are just underserved. They don't have access to capital. They don't have access to the best education. They don't have access to anything. And they're all crumpled together. Like, I don't have any connections. You don't have any connections. He doesn't have any connections. And I think it's something for all of our listeners to think of in a broad perspective. With the underserved communities, how can we give them access to the things they don't have? And definitely BJJ is one of them. So you took your piece and you ran with it, and that's awesome. I wanted to say also, because you do emit the vibes of Stoic philosophy. And Marcus Aurelius, another thing that he always talked about is if you live your life according to your principles, when it's your time to die, it's going to be easy to die. And he always says, what are your principles? A, you have to take care of your mind, your body, and B, what can you do for mankind? If you're going to die and the ship comes to port to pick you up, to take you away to the pearly gates or whatever you believe, you're going to be like, yeah, I'm good.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.
And since you're a man of God,
Yeah.
if are the pearly gates and St. Peter is there, he's going to see what you did.
Yeah.
You're getting in. So I'm going to ride on your coattails because I know you now. So I'm going to do that.
Just grab onto Ray's belt.
That's right. On that
grab
brown
onto
belt.
that
It might
new
be a
brown
black
belt.
That's
Yeah.
hilarious.
Well, let's hope by that time it's a black belt because we hope you live a long time. And the last thing and a call to action to our listeners is let's try to get jiu-jitsu into schools. I love your vision. I agree with your vision. Wrestling's in schools and nobody dies on that. And that wrestling is definitely more dangerous than jiu-jitsu in my opinion.
I agree.
You're getting slammed. Like our takedowns, you can do nice little trips and hold on to them as they go down. So, by the way, total respect. I love wrestling. I fear wrestlers.
Yeah.
I total respect to them.
Yeah.
But they could do it, and so could we. So let's do this. Our listeners, get on our podcast, get on our TikTok, our Facebook, and write down what you think we can do to get this done. Administrators and teachers. I'm a teacher. Let's talk about it. Let's get it going. Let's get this for young people. It will teach them to be humble, confident, kind, caring. It all comes from that. And you gave us two great examples of two kids that are getting that right now in your program. So I'm going to wrap this long tap out time up with a big thank you for representing jiu-jitsu, the philosophy, and taking care of the little people, the kids, those cute little humans who just need some love.
What else
You're
are we
taking
here
care of
for?
them.
We got to make
That's
sure
it. That's it. Amen. And one last thing. We are going to put a link at the bottom of this. So, we don't know. We have listeners all over, a lot in Australia, a lot in Europe. Some of our listeners are probably rich. Hey, rich listeners, why don't you click on the link and maybe do a little donation if you'd like to Ray, to his community jiu-jitsu club, and help him out, help out a kid. And if you do that, Ray will tell us and we'll give you some props. We'll give you some, unless you want to be anonymous, that's fine. If you want props, we'll give you props on our social media, which you deserve. Help a kid, $5, $1. Now I sound like a telemarketer, but anything helps. And Ray would totally appreciate it. And so would all of his kids. You have 30 kids now in your in your dojo?
Oh, well, we have about 80 kids right now we're serving between
80
the three
kids.
different locations. Yeah. And we're doing it all
80
right now
kids.
on a budget of less than $50,000. So anything definitely helps.
Anything helps, guys. So we're going to put that link, and that is our only call to action today. You don't have to share us. You don't have to drop hearts. We always ask you to do that. You don't have to send this to anybody. Just click on his link. Give him a little love.
We
Anything.
appreciate it.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Thank you,
And
guys.
where it starts with just one small community, like you did, and ends up turning into larger communities. Our podcast is reaching now 70 different countries. So I don't think, yeah. So I think this podcast is going to reach a lot more people than you realize, Ray. So thank you so much for your time.
Man, I appreciate
Thank
you
you.
guys. Thank you, man. I know we're going to see each other on the mats at some point. I can't wait for it.
Yes. Yeah. We want to test out that brown belt.
Yeah.
Definitely. All right. Listen, big hug for you.
When-
We're giving you a big
Fra-
hug right
Frank's
now.
gonna be like, I'm not in Kansas anymore.
No, I'm going to be in a world of hurt. I know that. But I'm going to burn so much clock, you're only going to have like 1 minute to tap me. All right, listen, I know you have another meeting.
Yes.
Ray,
Take care. Bye-bye.